I'm working on this crazy scroll saw project of Electra, and I'm noticing a problem with it. It keeps changing, like the colors. And what's insane about it is the colors are changing so rapidly. I'm working on the project, it looks beautiful. I come back the next day, and it looks really muted and brown. I think it has everything to do with light and air. You can even see it on the piece that I just sanded. I sanded both sides, all of it's really nice, bright red, but look at the edge there. Look at that. Untouched, and look how brown it is. I've been working on this project for months, and I don't want to be disappointed with how it turns out, so I need to figure out a solution to this whole color problem. But first, the environment. Well, I do have some sunlight. However, that sunlight is not shining directly on my picture. I mean, it's exposed to light, but it's not like that this is next to a window and heat's going through and it's warming up the project, nothing like that. It's in a complete climate-controlled environment. The overhead lights are all LED lights, they're not hot at all. So this is not like getting baked in or anything. It's inside my shop, climate controlled, just like all my projects. I do believe that this is a light issue and not an air issue. Reason being is because after I noticed the color changing, I decided to start covering up the picture. So I only remove the cover whenever I need to work on something, do something for a few minutes, and then I cover it back. So it's not exposed to light for very long. And what I noticed is that the color changes pretty much just slowed down or completely stopped. Well, it's still exposed to air. I mean, air's still touching it. It's just not direct light. That's why I need to have a solution for the finish, because I can't keep it covered up. I mean, that defeats the purpose. I'm mainly using a red heart for her dress. Now, I do typically use some reds when it comes to my projects. I mean, I have Deadpool back here, but most of that was Bloodwood, not red heart. And while I did fade and start to brown, nowhere near like with the red heart. So we need to test that out. What type of finish are we gonna test? Well, I've got some shellac, I got some hard wax finish, I'm gonna do some poly, and some spray lacquer. The reason why I'm testing these finishes is because they're the ones I typically use. Now I know someone could say, why don't you use this like outdoor marine spar varnish, whatever. That might be great. I don't want my project looking like thick plastic. It's a scroll saw project, or a wood box, or something that I typically make. So I have to make that balance between the aesthetics, how I want the project to look, versus the protection, and like lock it in that color. And it needs to be one of these finishes that I typically use. Which one's gonna do the best? I don't know. Let's find out. Taped off the board and I wrote labels so I know which sections have which type of finish on it. I'm gonna start with shellac. For no particular reason, then it's in my hand right now. In this case, I'm gonna apply 2 coats. These finishes are unique. That means they need to be applied in different ways, but there needs to be some sort of balance. For instance, the shellac here. I wouldn't typically use a foam brush because you kind of get some bubbles and streaks in it. I would usually like thin it down, some denatured alcohol, add a little bit of oil, like a French polish. But it's gonna go on a scroll saw project, and there's lots of little cutout areas, tiny spaces. I can't French polish that. I'm gonna have to use a brush. So I need to do my test board with a brush. Next, I'm gonna go with a hard wax finish. In this case, I'm gonna use Osmo, because that's my favorite hard wax finish. And I've got a white Scotch-Brite pad here. And I'm just gonna put a little bit in there and buff it into the surface. Out of the 4 finishes, this one actually might be my least favorite when it comes to a project like this. Now, it's one of my favorite for like a traditional project, like a box or a picture frame. That though, it's got all those little areas like I talked about, and you gotta get all the extra finish off the project. You can't have it just build up and sit there and dry. It's gonna look all gunky. So this one might be kind of tough to use for a scroll saw project. Next, I'm gonna use a wipe-on poly. It's just regular polyurethane. It's just thinned down a little bit with mineral spirits. Got a rag here. I have used poly on several scroll saw projects and it works pretty good. I will usually shy away from it and go towards like a lacquer finish instead, just because the poly will make the project look a little bit darker than what I'm going for, but it really depends like project to project and wood species to wood species. Sometimes it is the best one to use. The last finish is spray lacquer, and I gotta spray it. So I taped all this off. I'm gonna go outside and just like a that's my spray lacquer sound effect. Lacquer is my go-to finish for scroll saw projects, and that's because it's a good balance. It brings out the colors, the vividness in the wood, however it doesn't make it look too dark. And I spray it like really light coats, so I don't have to worry about it like building up too thick of a finish. What I don't know is how this is gonna react with this particular wood species and holding up against that whole like fading issue that I'm having with it. I finished my test board and I applied multiple coats of finish. So now I'm gonna let this sit out for a couple days and we're gonna come back and look at it later. But I can already see there is a difference from finish to finish and how it affects the wood. So I know that the poly doesn't look the same as the lacquer and so on. Just something to keep in mind when we go back and evaluate the results that, well, they're probably not gonna look exactly the same, but that's not what this test is. This test is really about how much it protects the wood from just like fading and losing all of its redness. Red hardiness. It's been 2 weeks, so now we can look at the results and see how well did these finishes hold up whenever it came to protecting the color. Looking at our test board, we've got poly, lacquer, hard wax finish, and shellac. Now when it comes to the poly, I'm liking it. Looks good. I like there's definitely contrast still between the darker areas and the lighter areas, so not too bad. Here's the lacquer. The lacquer I think's okay. It still has some of its color in it. It did fade just a bit. Now I can say I probably put maybe 3 coats of poly on here, probably 2 or 3 coats of lacquer on here. I used a thin lacquer, so you know, maybe if it had thicker lacquer, could have held up, I'm not really sure. Then you have the wax finish, which is close. It might not be hard to see here on camera, but it looks like the wax finish is not quite as vibrant as the lacquer. And then we have shellac, which I think turned out pretty good, maybe a little bit better than what I truly expected. Let's compare it to the back side, right? So this is the side I put against the table, and yeah, that's the raw wood. Pretty vivid. If we want to do a comparison, this was our sample board, our test board here. Look at that. That is what it looked like after 2 weeks of just sitting here on my workbench, just soaking up the shop lights. That's brown. That's what I was talking about. So when I set these next to each other, well, you know what? The lacquer and the poly don't look too bad compared to that one. When comparing the video footage from whenever I applied finish to now, I can see there's definitely a change. All 4 of these started to turn brown, which is surprising and a little bit disappointing, to be honest with you. I expect the wood to naturally turn brown over time. However, it's only been 2 weeks. Out of the 4 finishes, I'm probably gonna go with poly or lacquer. The other 2 are just a bit difficult to apply to a scroll saw project, but I did want to see that comparison of how they're gonna stand up against the other finishes. Right now, I think I like the poly better, but I wanna do one more test. I'm gonna take a board, I'm gonna sand it down, I'm gonna spray it with several coats of lacquer. Then I can do a comparison side by side, and I can see a freshly coated board compared to the 2-week-old board. That way I'm not looking at the old footage to the new footage trying to compare it. I got both of them right in front of my eyeballs. This is the new sample board sprayed with lacquer, and you may not be able to see it on camera, hopefully you can, but this is much more vibrant than the lacquer over here. This has lots of reds in it, looks beautiful. This much more brown. Doing the lacquer test again was a big help because I put a lot of extra layers on that one so that I could really get a better comparison. I still went back and forth on which finish, poly or lacquer, and I was about to put poly. Right at the very end, I decided to go with lacquer. Well, I didn't really see that much of a color difference between the two, even though poly was a little bit better. I do have a lot of lighter colors, maple, holly, and poly can make lighter woods yellow, and I want to keep those as natural as possible, so I decided to go with lacquer. We put our heart and soul into our projects and then rush the finishing process at the end. Why do that? Instead, take a time out, make some sample boards, think about it for a minute, and then finish it up. If you want to see how I made this entire project, I got a video on it. It's over on my scroll saw channel, Newton Makes Art. Yeah, I got a scroll saw channel. Usually there's like an icon. You usually put an icon over here with like a light bulb. Click on that, it goes to the scroll saw channel. It's all scroll saw stuff. Who knew? But there's a video on it. But hopefully you enjoyed this video. Until we meet again, get in your shop and build something awesome.